Hi everyone, I am April Schoen, a financial advisor with over a decade of experience in helping guide my clients to and through retirement. I've helped hundreds and hundreds of clients at this point in my career realize their goals, overcome their concerns and their challenges when it comes to how do they not only prepare for retirement, but make sure all their I's are dotted, all their T's are crossed, and they're really ready for that next stage of life. So welcome to our channel. We are kicking off a 5-part series on retirement planning for people over 50 on your path to having that secure future. Excited to share with you guys over these next 5 episodes. And we're going to be starting today by talking about how do you create that retirement framework, right? How do you make sure you have a good foundation and you're set and you're ready to go for whenever it is that you're going to retire. So as we're going to be going through this series, we're really looking to address some of those key components, concerns, questions that you might have about retirement planning. Because here's what I've realized in the last 10 years is that most people have the same questions when it comes to retirement. And these are big decisions that we have to make, and sometimes we're not quite sure how to make those decisions, or are we making the right ones? How do we test drive it and make sure that we're doing the right thing for ourselves and for our families? So our goal for this 5-part series is to really help you think about those questions and how do you answer them to make sure that you're ready. So today we're going to be talking about how do you create that retirement framework. Then next episode, we're going to talk about how do you maximize your retirement income. We're going to talk about Social Security, navigating Social Security benefits. Because let's be honest, when to take Social Security and structuring how to take Social Security is going to be one of, if not the biggest decision that you're going to make when it comes to your retirement. We're going to talk about investment strategies, right? What do we need to be thinking about with our investments when it comes to getting ready to retire? Because it's very different. It's very different when we're in our working years and we're saving money and we're taking our income and putting it back on our balance sheet to now we're stepping off into retirement. These are two totally different aspects to our world, and we have to make sure that we're investing properly for that. And then we're also going to talk about how do we structure that withdrawal plan, because that's also one of the biggest questions I get is, okay, April, I've done all of this. I've saved money in retirement accounts and investments. I know I have Social Security. I might even have a pension, but now what? How do I actually put together this retirement income plan? So in today's episode, we're going to be focusing on setting retirement goals, assessing where you are today, and then also how do you create that comprehensive retirement plan. Okay, so again, we're going to be focusing in on a few key areas here, is really setting some goals around retirement, and then looking at our current situation to make sure that we've got a solid foundation to build your retirement plan. And then we're going to talk about understanding what are those steps involved? What do we need to do to start creating that retirement plan? So the first step in building this framework is to set some goals around retirement. And the first question I'm going to talk about here is why set goals for retirement? Why is this even important? Well, I find that this is actually an area that people overlook, that we don't think about it enough. So when I ask questions to clients like, hey, when do you want to retire? Some people don't know. What are we going to do in retirement? What's in retirement going to look like for us? And we don't have answers to those questions. So if that's you, the first thing I would say that we do is we set up with, let's think about it. Let's think about when do we want to retire. In an ideal world, if you could have it any way you want it, I don't want you to think about the how. That's what we get hung up on. We get hung up on the how. How am I going to retire? But I want you to think about, in an ideal world, when do you want to retire? And then from there, we got to think about, what do we want retirement to look like? So when you've stepped off into retirement, now every day is like Saturday and Sunday, what do you want that to look like? What are you going to do with your time? Do you have travel plans? Are there hobbies that you want to get involved with, right? You want to work on your golf game or pick up pickleball, or maybe there's some organizations that you want to volunteer with, right? So I want you to think about, what is your retirement going to look like? And there's really, some kind of key things in that. One, I would think about, where do I want to live? Am I going to stay in my current house? Am I going to move, right? Some people may downsize. We may move to be closer to children and grandchildren. So this is all part of, what does my ideal retirement look like? And of course, when do I want to retire? Now, I would say for most people, what I find to be typical in my practice is people are saying, hey, I want to retire at 65, I want to retire at 70. Those are probably the most two common ages that I hear, but it doesn't mean that has to be for you. So again, think about, when do you want to retire, so that you can build your framework around that. We've got to have a starting point. It might mean that we adjust it. I'm not saying if we say today, hey, I want to retire at 62, that's the end all be all, and that's, we're going to write it in stone. But it is helpful if we have some end date in mind, that we have some time frame, right? Because we've got to have a way to measure it. We've got to have a way to say, okay, here I am today, I'm 52, I'm going to retire in 10 years when I'm 62. What is that going to look like for me from an income standpoint, right? Can I retire at 62? That's going to be the next question. But we need to start with a time frame so that we can have something to measure it by, right? And then, when we're thinking about these retirement goals, one of the things that we want to do is we want to create a spending plan. Now, I do not like the term budget. I think budget is like a 4-letter word, or it's actually more like a diet, right? It's that restrictive diet that we just don't stick to very well, and then we tend to binge eat afterwards. I think of a budget that way too. So I don't necessarily want you to create a budget, but I do want you to have a spending plan, right? I want us to have an idea about, what is that income needs and wants going to look like for us in retirement. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more today. And then, of course, you guys have all heard of SMART goals, right? We want to have, when we're setting these goals, we want to make sure that they're specific, that they're measurable, achievable, relevant, and they're time bound. Right? So thinking back to retirement, it's easy for us to craft some SMART goals around that. We know when we want to retire, it's in 10 years. We have a spending plan and a rough idea of a spending plan, so we know what we need, right? We know where we are today, and then we know if there's any sort of gaps or adjustments that we need to make between now and then. Right? So this is really what we kind of want to think about when we're thinking about these retirement goals, right? So when do we want to retire? And what do we want our retirement to look like, and creating that spending plan for retirement. So once we have that, once we have an idea of what our goals are, what do we want life to look like in the future, the next step is we want to look at, where are we today, right? Because we can really assess and say, okay, here's where we want to be in the future, here's where we are today. Are those two things in alignment, right? I like asking the question, if we keep doing what we're doing today for the next 10 or 15 years, are we going to reach our goals? Or are some tweaks needed? I find for a lot of people that we need some tweaks. We need some adjustments. And what's great about once you have this plan is it's easy then to make those adjustments. Think about if we're on a sailboat and we're sailing in this direction, we're not making big changes once we have our destination set, right? We're making these small little minor changes along the way. And we want to do the same thing with your retirement plan, right? We first got to get it crafted and created and get the baseline for it, but then it's really just about making some small adjustments along the way. So how do we start by assessing where you are today? Well, we're going to look at two key areas on your balance sheet. We're first going to talk about your assets. Assets, this is everything you own that has value, okay? Think cash, savings accounts, money markets, investments, real estate, retirement accounts, personal property, right? This is everything that you own is going to comprise your assets. So we want to take stock of that. We want to take an inventory and say, what do we have as far as assets are concerned? So to get started with that, if you don't have this some kind of created somewhere already, what you want to do is you want to gather your financial statements and your documents, and you want to create like a comprehensive list of all of your assets and their current values. I encourage you to do this even if you're not really thinking about retirement yet, because just so you can know what you have, right? We got to know what we have today so we can look at it and see, do we need to make any changes? I was just doing this last night actually for my family. I typically do this on a quarterly basis where I sit down and do an overall kind of update and review about where we are from an assets and liability standpoint. So what you're going to want to do is just grab those account statements. You may have to log into a few places. You want to check out how much do I have in checking and savings, money markets, CDs, right? What do I have any sort of taxable investment accounts, a brokerage account? What does that look like? Do we have retirement accounts through work or IRAs or Roth IRAs? So you want to take an inventory of all the assets. And then we want to take a look at the other side of the balance sheet, which is the liabilities. So this is, what do you owe, right? So we think, what do you own and what do you owe? So when we think about the liabilities, mortgage, car loans, credit card debt, student loans, personal debt, right? And you want to do the same thing here. You want to do an inventory of, I want to think of like current balances, minimum payments, interest rates, so you can take a look at what do you have, and then what's the payoff date, right? When are these liabilities going to be paid off? Because this is going to really help you determine, kind of again, going back to that, thinking about creating a spending plan for retirement. If we have debts, we need to know what will be paid off before we retire, right? So let's do a deep dive, really, of different types of assets. Okay, so when we think of assets, now this isn't a comprehensive list. You're going to see I'm just kind of keeping it high level here, but we really think of cash. So again, checking, savings, money market, CDs, right? Cash on hand, any sort of cash equivalent. We think of investments. Now, when I say investments here, what I'm meaning is non-retirement investment accounts. So, right, nothing that's like a 401k through work or an IRA or Roth IRA. These are taxable investments, non-retirement investments. What about retirement accounts, right? Do we have a employer-sponsored retirement account? Okay, that thing goes by a bunch of different names. It could be a 401k, 403b, 457. You've got simple plans, SEPs, right? Lots of different names, but do we have a retirement account? There's IRAs and Roth IRAs, right? Did you set up an individual retirement account on your own? One of the things that I find here sometimes for clients is that we've got things in multiple places. And that's not necessarily bad, but sometimes it's hard to keep track of, right? How do we know exactly what we have, and what do we, is it all working for us? I was working with a client recently, and they have multiple Roth IRAs, and they just kind of set them up kind of sporadically over the years. And in fact, one of their Roth IRAs, it wasn't even invested, it was like sitting in cash, right? So that wasn't their intention. That's not what they wanted to have happen. It's just kind of been that way because we weren't checking up on it. So take an inventory of those accounts. See if there's some changes and tweaks that need to be made there. We also have real estate, right? Primary home. Do we have rental properties, vacation homes, second homes, right? What do we have as far as real estate? And then think about retirement too for those. Does that mean that we've got liabilities attached to those, or we have expenses that are attached to those retirement accounts? Tied to that real estate, right? So again, thinking about these assets, cash, investments, retirement accounts, and real estate. If we start thinking about different types of liabilities, well, the most obvious one is your mortgage, right? And so the question here is, will that mortgage be paid off by the time you retire? Or do we need to work on a plan to have it paid off? I'm not saying you do. I'm just saying we need to investigate that. We need to analyze that to see if that's a decision that we need to make, right? Car loans. Do we have any car loans today? Will we be buying a new car before we retire, right? We want to make sure that we have plans for that. Do we have any credit card debt? And if we do have any credit card debt, how do we put a plan in place to pay that down efficiently and effectively? You know, we think of credit card debt like that anchor that you pull with you through life. You know, it's not something that we want to carry indefinitely. So if you have credit card debt, it's not necessarily a bad thing to have, but we just want to make sure that we've got a plan for that. And I can tell you my clients that step off into retirement that have already resolved the credit card debt issue, they're much, much happier, you know, less stress in their lives. What about student loans? This may surprise you or may not, but I'm actually seeing more people today who are retiring with student loans. You know, these are people who went back to school at some point in their career. Maybe they had a career change, or they wanted to continue their education to look for a promotion or some sort of job change, right? And so now we're stepping off into retirement and we have student loans. Or maybe we were planning to work till 70, but life happened and now we have to retire much earlier than we planned, right? Because we've had some sort of health issue or something along those lines, or we got to step out of work to take care of a family member, and then now we have these other things in our financial world that we weren't really planning on having that, right? So I think it's always great for us to have a plan, but we also need to have some extra strategies, and we got to work on the what ifs, the contingents. What if something like that happens, or what are we going to do? So once we have this inventory of your assets and your liabilities, then we can work on understanding our net worth. So your net worth calculation is pretty simple. Net worth equals total assets minus your total liabilities. Right? So when we think about when we're working, we're in our working years, our primary goal is we're saving money. Right? We're taking income that we're earning today and we're turning that into net worth because we're saving it somewhere back on our balance sheet. Right? So we take money from our job and we systematically save it, invest it, and to build up those assets. And I want you to think of your income while you're working as the fuel for your financial engine. Right? So by saving a portion of your income and investing it wisely, we're building wealth. Right? That's how we're going to build those retirement accounts, real estate, stocks, bonds. And over the years, these assets, they grow, they compound, and that's really what's growing your net worth over time. And I really think of net worth as being just this like snapshot of your financial health. It's really just a picture of all the financial decisions that you've made. And when you retire, this focus is going to change, right? It's going to change from now I'm earning and saving money to now I'm going to be taking income. I'm going to be withdrawing money from my assets. And so now the opposite happens. Now what we're going to be doing, instead of taking our income and converting it to net worth, we're now going to take our net worth and we're going to convert it into income. Right? That's really what that retirement plan is how do we take all of these assets that we've accumulated over our careers and how do we now turn that into an income that we can live off of for the rest of our lives. So, your net worth, which is again savings, investments, assets, it's now going to serve as one of the sources for your retirement income, which we're going to get into later in this series. And so this might mean, right, we're going to start taking money from retirement accounts. We're receiving dividends from stocks and bonds. Maybe we're getting rental income from properties. Maybe we've got a pension. We're going to have Social Security most likely, right? So really taking a look at like all the pieces to that retirement puzzle, but your net worth is definitely one of them. So once we have an idea, again, thinking back, right, we've looked at and thought about our goals for retirement. So we know when we want to retire, we know what we want retirement to look like. Then we take a look at, okay, well, where are we today? So we know where we're going in the future, and then we know where we are today, and we can do some analysis to see how to create that retirement plan. And are we on track? Right? Are we going to be able to retire in 10 years or 5 years, whatever that looks like for you? Or are some tweaks needed? Right? So we really want to start by creating a comprehensive retirement plan. And again, we're going to make tweaks. It's not written in stone, but I always recommend we've got to have a baseline. We got to have a starting point. So the first thing we want to do again is when we're creating this retirement plan is, when do we want to retire? So for this analogy, let's just assume that we want to retire in 10 years. That's our goal. Our goal is we're gonna walk off into retirement in 10 years from now. So once we have a time in mind about when we're going to retire, the next thing we want to do is we want to create a spending plan. And what I really recommend that we do is, because this kind of can throw people off, because most people at this stage don't have a budget. They haven't budgeted in quite some time. And honestly, they don't really even know how much they're spending on a day-to-day basis for a lot of people. So we start here. It's not perfect. I don't need it to be perfect. It doesn't have to be like granular down into the details, but we just want some idea of what this spending plan needs to be for retirement. So what I would tell you to do is look at your current spending today. Do an analysis. Take a look at your spending habits over the last 3 to 6 months. And take a look at those, and we want to break those spending habits down into what's essential spending and what's discretionary, right? What are those basic living expenses that we need to continue living our life? And then what are some more of those discretionary items that make our life feel like our life, right? So we just want to have an idea what's essential, what's discretionary. And then when you're also looking at this, depending on how far away from retirement you are, again, you want to ask the question, am I still going to have this need in retirement? So think back if you have some debt, right? Will the mortgage be paid off? Will the car be paid off? Right? Are there certain things that we have in our world today that we're not going to have in retirement? But the opposite is also true. Are there things that we're going to need in retirement that we don't have today? The first thing that comes into my mind is healthcare. We got to have a plan for what's our healthcare going to look like in retirement. So that's one of the things that you want to think about and consider. So once we have this spending plans, we have a rough idea about what that income is going to look like, we then want to analyze what are our future income sources. So let me give you some examples, right? We want to think about, when am I going to take Social Security? Do I have a pension of some sort? And what is that pension going to be? And then looking at our other investments, retirement accounts, thinking through and creating that withdrawal plan for how am I going to take money from those accounts? What's the best way to structure that income so I have the income that I need today to live my lifestyle, but that I also don't run out of money right before I run out of time, right? So we don't want to make sure that we don't outlive our money. And so when we're thinking about looking at these income sources, so if we say, okay, great, here's my income, here's what my income's going to be in retirement, here's my spending plan, then we can see, do we have a gap or do we have a surplus? If we have a gap, then we need to go back and we need to create a savings and investment plan to start bridging the gap, right? What are the strategies that we could put in place today to start getting those two numbers closer and closer together, right? And we're going to be talking a lot more in detail about creating this retirement plan, because I say comprehensive here, but it's complex. I think about a retirement plan and I think of all the puzzle pieces that you have in your financial world, and how do we put those together and structure it in a way to put you in the best possible position, right? And so what we want to do is we really want to, after we kind of look at those income sources, we want to identify, are there any income gaps? And if there are, how are we going to develop, change, tweak our savings and investment strategy? So I love it when someone is like 10 years out, because we've got time. You don't have all the time in the world, but we've got time to make some tweaks and adjustments. We got to start now, but we do have the time to make some changes to get you there. And that's one of my favorite things I love doing with clients, is saying, okay, great, we want to retire in 10 years. Here's where we are today. And what we do with that is we'll do what's called a retirement rehearsal, where we say, based on everything you have in your financial world today, this is about what your income is going to look like in retirement. And then we need to ask the question, hey, how does this look, right? Is this achievable? How does this look for an income standpoint side? And we got to make sure that we have enough income coming in today, or I say today, but meaning when you first retire, to satisfy, that income that you need and want. But we also have to make sure, it doesn't stop there, we also have to make sure that you've got more income coming in later. Because we know with inflation that you're going to need more income tomorrow than you need today. So we also have to take that inflation piece into consideration, which we're going to definitely talk more about in this series. But once we really have this retirement plan, again, think about this retirement rehearsal, having a baseline, then we want to do some regular reviews and adjustments, right? This plan is not stagnant. It doesn't, just because we set it up today, doesn't mean it's going to be the same for the next 10 years. We have to meet regularly to review, make adjustments. How are things going, right? Are we ahead of schedule? Are we behind schedule? And really updating those numbers. And I love doing this with clients, because when we update those retirement rehearsal numbers, I love how we get closer and closer to retirement, that picture becomes clearer and clearer. And it really helps my clients have more confidence, because they know what the income side is going to look like for them, right? They can see it in black and white. We've done all the analysis. We've done the what if. We've said, what if we retire early? What if we retire later? What if we get sick, right? What happens when one of us, a spouse, passes away? We've done the kind of ins and outs, and so they know what they need to do now to put them in a better situation, right? They know what's working. They know what tweaks need to be made, and it really does give them more of that confidence for them to be excited about it and not stressed and worried about it, and honestly, now they're kind of looking forward to retirement more than they were before. It's pretty neat. So as we're kind of like, I'm going to go through, I'm going to recap what we've discussed so far today. And so to recap, we've really discussed how do you set some goals and priorities around retirement. We've talked about how do you take an inventory about where you are today, both your assets and your liabilities. And then we talked about creating that comprehensive retirement plan. So I want to give you some action steps, because I always want you to leave being able to know, okay, this is my next best step. This is the thing that I need to do next to move myself forward. First, I want you to take some time and define those retirement goals. Use the framework I talked about earlier with having some SMART goals, but go and think about it, define, really prioritize what those retirement goals are going to look like for you. Gather your financial statements. Take an inventory, grab those statements, grab those documents, and create a detailed list for your assets and liabilities. We have a planning software that we use for our clients that helps our clients get organized, stay organized, and it's really a great place for them to really see everything that they have in their financial world in one place. Okay, so I encourage you to have something similar like that. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to start working on that retirement plan. Think about your goals, think about your current financial situation, do that spending plan, forecast what your income is going to look like in retirement, right? So you can know, is there a gap or not? That's a very crucial piece of information for you to know. So kind of key action steps: define your retirement goals, take an inventory of where you are today, and then start building that retirement plan. Now, in our next episode coming up, we're going to talk about how do we maximize that retirement income. So again, we're going to kind of think about having that baseline, that first run through of a retirement rehearsal, and then how do we make it better? How do we maximize the retirement income? So be sure to tune in to our next episode as we kind of get ready for that. And as we're kind of thinking through this, as you're thinking through this, and you might be saying, hey, I need some help with this. Maybe I need some help thinking through and someone to ask you questions so that you can create your retirement goals. Maybe you need help with figuring out, assessing, hey, where am I today? I've got kind of things in different places and I'm not sure how they all work together. Or maybe the idea of creating that retirement plan is very daunting and scary, and you would love to have someone who can help you with that to make sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's and that we're not leaving any stone unturned. So if that's you and you'd like to schedule a time for a complimentary consultation with me or someone on our team, I'd recommend that you go to our website, which is www.curryshowenfinancial.com, and you're going to see a link that's going to say book a call. And you can click that link. It's going to take you right to my calendar. You can click on the 30-minute phone call, and you can pick a time on my calendar that works best for you. So again, I'm going to give you that website. That is curryshowenfinancial.com. And what we do in this complimentary call is we're going to talk through, again, your goals, your concerns, and then we'll be able to kind of give you some tailored advice, kind of where you are today and what are some of those key action items that you should be working on in building your own retirement plan. And then we'll also discuss more about what we do and how we help clients and if it makes sense for us to work together in some capacity. So as we're wrapping up here today, I just want to say thank you for joining me today. I hope you found this impactful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye now.